Mr. Cole, Chairman of the full committee. Go ahead with your opening statement.
Well, I'm not going to do the opening statement. Having arrived late, I'll submit it for the record. Let me make a couple of quick comments. Number one, I apologize for being late, Mr. Secretary, but your boss was in our conference, and I have a rule: I don't get up and walk out on the President of the United States. So
that's a very good rule.
Seems to have worked well over the years. And I also wanted to say how glad I am that he made the decision to appoint you to this job. I think you are superbly suited for it. You have an excellent background. You know the issues, frankly, better than any incoming secretary that I've seen during my tenure in Congress. And I particularly appreciate the fact you had such strong tribal support from your home state, from people you dealt with for many years and thought very highly of your tenure there. And I particularly, coming from Oklahoma, appreciate the energy background, the energy interest, and the sheer knowledge that you bring to this job and what that's going to mean for the country going forward. You're going to like this committee, quite frankly. You won't agree with them on every single thing, but Mike is one of our best chairmen, without a doubt, and Ms. Pingree is one of our very best ranking members, and of course has chaired this committee in the past as well. And they know how to strike a deal. They know how to work together. And when they fight, they do it in an appropriate way. So, again, I think you're going to enjoy working with the members on both sides, frankly, of the aisle in this particular subcommittee. With that, as you know, and we've had the opportunity to discuss offline before, I do care, and I know this committee cares on both sides of the aisle very, very strongly about tribal issues. So I wanted to ask you, can you talk a little bit, maybe you've done, are we into questioning as well, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman? Okay, I assume we were. Can you talk a little bit about the cut to BIA operations of Indian programs and BIA education construction?
Again, and
BIE, I should have said.
yes. Well, first of all, let me just start with BIE. There's some incredible challenges. Let's just step back from the budget a little bit. Sure. I mean, there's 125,000 K-12 kids involved in this BIE system, and the challenges there are greater than just the budget dollars and the construction. It's interesting that this is a similar size. The state of North Dakota had about exactly 125,000 students in a K-12 system. In North Dakota, we had BIE schools, we had tribal schools, and we had public schools in North Dakota, and a small number of private parochial schools. If you stacked them all up together, the ones where we were spending the highest dollar amount and had the worst outcomes was the BIE schools. And as a governor, this was frustrating because I felt, again, every enrolled member of every tribe is also a North Dakota citizen and a U.S. citizen. And when I took office and when I campaigned, I said, it doesn't matter if you voted for me or not. As governor, I'm responsible for everybody here. And we're, to the degree that whether it's roads or public safety or education, felt that responsibility. But the BIE schools were tough to get it because they were isolated. We had a better shot at helping the tribal schools that were tribally run but still could get state aid than we could on BIE. So I'm bringing a lens where I've had an opportunity to see this thing where it's not, funding is the issue, and there's a lot of deferred maintenance out there. I mean, for sure there is, and we need that, but we've got to figure out there's something else going on here that we have to take a look at other than just budget. I mean, I think we've seen that across education in this country. It's not always a correlative between the more money you spend, the better outcomes you get. So that's something that we're dedicated as we get our team on board and bring people on board. We're trying to really dig into this, dig in to understand, what the challenges and the opportunities are. And I think that, they're not spread. There's many states that do not have any BIE schools, and so there's an opportunity to look for deeper partnerships between the states. And also to say if the tribal thing, because some of the tribes that have taken over the responsibility for those BIE schools at a local level, some of them have got an interest in the resources to do it. The really sad place when you think about synergies in states like mine, we got one tribe where you've got a BIE school and a tribal school, and they're within a mile of each other, and you're like, okay, are they're why wouldn't they be working together? I mean, is it because they're worried about 5 less spots on the starting basketball team, or is it because some economic incentive that's causing people to say, hey, we want to keep the tribal school because of the pay structure for teachers and school board members versus a public school where maybe school board members are not getting paid. I mean, I think we got to really dig in and try to find out why in those cases it wouldn't be just a natural desire to get synergies between those existing structures. And I think it's going to be on a community by community, case by case basis. But this is we're not talking about millions and millions of, I mean, by comparison, Clark County has got 300,000 students in one county. I mean, we're talking about 100. These are small rural schools, which I'm very familiar with. But even within those, I think there's a way where we can find some solutions. So yeah, people will be concerned about a proposed budget that has lower dollars, but I'm more concerned about how do we find a long-term solution, because we could fund it at last year's level, fund it at a higher level, and I don't think and then the question you should be asking me is, are we getting better outcomes? I mean, we're running an education system, and that's the thing that we've got to be focused on together. So we'd love to come back and work with all of you as we try to really pull this thing back, because if we have a trust responsibility, we shouldn't be just saying, let's give more money to the worst performing K-12 system in the country. And it's not because we don't have teachers that care, because there's people that are in these systems that, care deeply, but let's go figure that problem out. And I don't know if you've got staff that's focused on BIE in particular, but this is one of the issues that requires some real attention.
Well, I certainly agree with that, but I also think that kids have to have a good place to learn too. And sometimes that's an expression of whether or not you care about them very much. And I've been to some excellent BIE schools and some excellent things. I totally agree with your emphasis on culture and outcome, but I've been to some places I wouldn't send my kid to. It's simply because the resources aren't there and haven't ever been there. It's not your responsibility. You just showed up. But, I've actually toured a lot of these schools with my friend here, the chairman, and other places. And tribes will vary, as you know, greatly in their ability to resource things. It makes a lot of difference if you happen to be fortunate enough and have mineral wealth, or you happen to have a location and you've got a gaming operation. I don't find tribes being short in taking care of their own people when they've got the resources to do it. I have often found the federal government very short in fulfilling its trust responsibility. So I just say that is something we'll be looking at. I appreciate having you there.
But I would say, Mr. Chairman, I agree with you on that last point, because, of course, we've got an energy tribe in North Dakota that we've worked hard to get the work with them side by side to cut federal red tape to allow them to develop their energy resources. We worked on tax sharing agreements to make sure that we had fair agreements with them. And once they had their economy going, they had some of the nicest schools in our state are in MHA Nation. I mean, the facilities, whatever. I mean, these guys have gone out, and I mean, they will put the dollars back into facilities and education if we can help them get their economic development. So it's tied. I mean, the economic development is tied to their ability to manage these facilities.
Absolutely. I remember talking to a good mutual friend we have, Mr. Ham, Continental, and we were talking about the difficulty of energy exploration and production on non-federal land, which, North Dakota is famous as a energy-friendly and supportive state, versus what happened the minute he crossed an imaginary line onto an Indian reservation. It was not the tribes, it was the just relentless, federal regulation, fee structure, everything else. And so I commend your work in that, because, again, if they have resources, they'll put them in the right places. And
well, and I would say I've always said that the hardest job in politics is not as representative or a senator or a governor. It's being a tribal chair or a tribal member, because they have to deal with layers of federal regulation in addition to.
My mother was the first Native American woman in the state Senate in Oklahoma, and I asked her once, why didn't you do tribal politics? She said, it's too tough. It's like family politics, and it is. Can I have, I'm using my time, but I have one more area I particularly wanted to ask you about, if I may. December disaster supplemental, which, again, arrived before you got here, provided $50 million for Historic Preservation Fund and $2.3 billion for the National Park Service to reconstruct historic sites and Park Service units that were damaged from disaster events such as devastating tornadoes, which frankly hit my district. So And I'm glad to see the notice of funding opportunity announced for the Historic Preservation Fund money last week, but I am a bit frustrated it's taken as long for NOFO to be published because it's only the first step in the process and these communities need help. So what's the department's timeline for reviewing these applications and getting money kind of moving toward these communities?
Well, we're trying to accelerate where we are. Some of those have recently been released. Others we've been working in conjunction with OMB and other entities on getting to the next spot and getting those dollars out. So,
well, I appreciate you taking a personal interest in that. Look, a lot of people are working hard to try and get stuff out the door. We know that, but I just wanted to notice that I've got both historic national park areas that have been hit hard, Chickasaw National Recreation Area, where we have some progress moving, and I'm appreciative of that. But particularly a little town called Sulphur, Oklahoma, a historic downtown area, and literally leveled by a tornado. Actually, multiple tornadoes in the same night. So if you can look at those things, I know other communities and other districts are in the same thing, but just moving it along faster would make a huge difference. And appreciate you looking into that if you can and staying on top of it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to Shelley, I just want to say on the topic that Tom was just talking about with Bureau of Indian Education and buildings and reducing the funding for buildings. I agree with everything you said about finding out why these schools aren't performing and what needs to be done to change them and address that. I got no problem with that. In fact, it ought to be done. That doesn't change the fact that we're talking about facilities here and facilities across. I mean, Tom and I have been to, as he said, many tribes, and he said he wouldn't send his kids to some of them. I've often said I wouldn't board my dog overnight at some of them because they're dangerous. And so that's what this committee has been focused on, is trying to make sure that we have the resources to build the schools that these kids need. And as Tom so eloquently said, that oftentimes means to those kids how much you think about them and stuff. So